Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special event. My name is Cheryl Wills, a journalist here in New York City. I work for New York One News. And it's a rare privilege and an honor for me to be here today in this great hall where important decisions are made. I am proud to be the great-great-great-granddaughter of Sandy Wills, an African-American slave who was held in bondage in the state of Tennessee. And my African roots are what bring me here today. I take great interest in what happened when the Ebola virus, Ban Ki-moon. Please welcome him.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Angelo Antonio Toriello, Deputy Permanent Representative of Sao Tome and Principe, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be with you this evening. I thank the government of Sao Tome and Principe and with the Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, the United African Congress,
Thank you, Excellency. The next speaker is the leader of the coalition that made this powerful event possible. He represents a group of 2 small islands off the coast of West Africa and neighbor to the countries most affected by the virus, Sao Tome and Principe. He is thankful that his country was spared the epidemic, but he believes that it's their duty to make some contribution in the fight against it, and even more importantly, to build the future so as to ensure that Africa has the wherewithal to fight all the diseases that afflict the continent, not just Ebola. Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Sao Tome and Principe, Ambassador Angelo Toriello.
His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General, and Madam First Lady, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Sao Tome and Principe, I would like to welcome you all and express you the profound privilege to having you all here. And it is not just an honor, but more than that, it is a touching human experience to feel your presence here as human beings, to stand together for a cause to contrast the Ebola virus, which unfortunately still continues to strike violently. In fact, and though Sao Tome and Principe is a small country and not being affected by the virus, we thought to support our African brothers by organizing, in collaboration with the coalition led by members of the civil society and NGOs, this modest event with intent to recall awareness on it, in order to alert the community at large and the stakeholders to remain vigilant, as the virus is still there in ambush. Only thanks to this coalition of human beings and the great support of the many UN agencies and staffs, we could make this program possible. But since time is very limited, and to allow the execution of this program, I won't dwell on praising them, because the program itself will speak about their greatness. Therefore, Mr. Secretary General, allow me just for some time to extend my speech beyond the main subject, which is the Ebola, and to talk about human beings. As this evening, your presence, together with the diplomatic and civil community, witnesses something that goes just beyond the protocols alone. And it is a presence witnessing the human support for microstates like Sao Tome and Principe, and their goodwill to be part of the development of a global betterment. Yes, Mr. Secretary General, particularly your presence here together with other diplomats today is witnessing to stand for the smallest and the weakest, contrasting in this way a mentality made by old scheme of thinking where the survival of the fittest seems to be the only prevailing rule of the society. In view of this, Mr. Secretary General, allow us to be with you, standing for the same values of justice and equality which are yet the flag of your long campaign, and allow us to loudly say that this evening, this Ebola program is not a show-off event, part of a show to entertain the audience, or to compete for some award, and neither to impress some jury to be judged as a successful program or a flop. No, Mr. General, it is not in this way. Nothing like that, but simply this event has been realized as a medium to spread awareness in support of human life. And it has been realized at any cost, with passion, dedication, to just give something back to our African brothers who along the course of history have been in one way or the other affected by severe collateral effects, let me call them like this, due to unwisdom of humandom. So, there will be a lot to say, but simply I conclude saying that this evening, your presence, Mr. Secretary General, your presence, Excellencies, your human presence all has already made a difference. Since we all have yet inoculated a stronger virus in the sick human system, much more powerful than any Ebola virus, and which is the only one to be able to fight any virus like the Ebola. This virus, the name is love and care for each other, for the human beings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. As an American, I was quite proud to see that my president and my country stepped up to help fight Ebola in West Africa, with particular emphasis on Liberia, a country, of course, with historic ties to the United States. America sent more than 4,000 personnel to help fight the epidemic, and I dare say it's had a positive impact in doing so. The next speaker can tell you all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, the permanent representative of the United States to the United Nations, Ambassador Samantha Power.
Good evening, everybody. I am completely honored to be a part of this important event, and I want to thank Mr. Secretary General, Mrs. Bond, for being here and for honoring the important cause that we're here to join forces to continue to combat by being here. And I want to thank all of you as well for taking time out of your days to show your support. In order to understand the promise and the urgency of responding to Ebola in March 2015, we have to understand the devastation caused by the epidemic over the last year and the cruelty of the disease when it strikes. Back before the international community mobilized to provide an impactful number of Ebola treatment units, labs, health worker training sessions, motorcycles, bicycles, SIM cards, chlorine, cash, the list goes on. But back before all of that, it was not obvious that we could bend the curve of the epidemic. Last September, one staff worker with Médecins Sans Frontières, Pierre Turbovich, who worked at one of the biggest Ebola treatment centers in existence.
Represent a country from Africa. However, like his country, he was moved by the suffering caused to the people of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, and the epidemic really touched him. In the true tradition of "there before the grace of God go I," he wanted to express some words of encouragement at this event. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Ambassador Sebastiano Cardi, Permanent Representative of Italy to the United Nations.
Thank you very much. It is true that Italy is not an African country, but we are very close to them and to this fight. Also geographically, we are very close to the borders of Africa, of course. Mr. Secretary General, Mrs. Ban, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, first of all, I'd like to thank the mission and the authorities of Sao Tome and Principe and Ambassador Toriello for having organized this timely event. This latest report assessing the Ebola outbreak and the response by the international community and the United Nations emergency mission in particular, to which we must extend a big thank you. The Secretary General highlights the overall significant decline in the number of new cases of Ebola in the three most affected countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, stressing, however, that setbacks can quickly follow apparent gains. There is the need for constant vigilance to ensure that this promising trend decline is not reversed and is sustained in the upcoming months. Yet we are witnessing this decline, and it speaks volume of the results that international cooperation can achieve in facing transnational threats such as Ebola. It is a huge collective effort. We must continue with resolve and determination until we meet the zero-case target. One new case of contagion is too much, is one too much. One new case is one too dangerous. In assessing the overall decline, our gratitude goes first and foremost to the authority of the affected countries, to the UNMIR, the mission of the United Nations, to the health workers on the ground. They are the protagonists of this fight, and towards them we have an obligation to ensure they work in the safest possible conditions and that the fight against Ebola continue to remain high on the international agenda and receive the funding it needs. The role of local political leadership is also essential in bringing the epidemic under control and hitting the zero target. Italy, as I said before, is close to this fight. We'll continue to remain highly committed to this common endeavor and towards the zero target. We must also start paving the road from emergency towards recovery, addressing the economic and social setbacks the epidemic has created in the affected countries and improving preparedness and prevention mechanisms in order to avert new crises. We must take stock of the lesson learned both at national and international level to improve early warning and early response mechanisms, focusing on the need to rethink healthcare systems and assist the affected countries in their needs. In this context, I wish to conclude my brief remarks by recalling the high-level meeting the European Commission is organizing tomorrow in Brussels to consider the additional actions required to end the epidemic and to discuss a set of principles to guide the recovery of the three affected countries. I thank you very much.
Next is a leader on the local and the national front and one of the initiators of this very special event. He is a Sierra Leone native and he takes what's been happening there very personally. He is the senior advisor to the Police Commissioner of New York City and president and national spokesperson of the United African Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sadiq Y.
Your Excellency, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Mrs. Moon, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. You know, before I say anything, I was told, threatened by Ambassador Toriello, that there is a partnership between diplomacy and humanity. So he calls it Humanicy. So today, my colleagues asked me to stand here. I'm not an ambassador, but I come from the hood. And today, Secretary General, I know Honorable Samantha Powers is here. They have been passing legislation for green cards and blue cards, but we are in the People's House, so INS, you could stay away, no immigration, we are under executive privilege. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be serious a little bit. I stand here as a living proof of what Africa is like. I was born in Sierra Leone. My father was born in Liberia. And my grandmother was born in Guinea, Kindia. So I personally have a personal interest of what is going on. But let me be honest. This event tonight will not have been possible without the clear support of the Secretary General, Honorable Samantha Powers, Ambassador Toriello, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and let me tell you about the Musketeers. All of those, Gordon Tapper, he's Jamaican, Yaman, and Dr. Mohammed Nur Hussein, a distinguished professor of medicine from Ethiopia. Oh, by the way, Ethiopia also sent doctors like the Cubans did when others were closing the doors. So, why don't I just say, all of those wonderful people that were responsible for putting this thing together, I don't know whether this is out of protocol, but the truth must be told that it's a partnership between civil society and this great house that we're in. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, could you just stand and let the people see you in the people's house? And then I could shut up and listen. Give them a big round of applause. I will shut up and listen, and thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you for that, Sadiq. At this point, we're going to have a change of pace. My husband just said, "You're too serious up there. Smile a little bit." So I'm going to smile, okay? And we are going to have some music and some dancing, and this is the one time in the General Assembly where you are free to dance in the aisles if you so choose.
I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Nepal for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sao Tome and Principe. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Among the many important issues and the resolution that we have today, which Sao Tome and Principe support fully, we would like to focus more on the International Day of Yoga as a means of promoting health and evolution, allow me to say that. But it's not only a matter of health, it's a matter of to have a clarity of vision through a mental approach that yoga could provide. In fact, it's not only the body that we have to cure and to improve, but it's mainly the mental system through which human being is ruling, making rules and law. In fact, the yoga, I believe, is a very important medium which can give clarity of vision, and if there is clarity of vision, there is clarity of action. And when we have clarity of vision and action, that can help us to prevent incongruities and contradiction through which normally every institution is going through. In fact, those contradictions sometimes they generate a lot of, let's say, confusion while making rules and promoting laws. Therefore, it is very important that the Yoga Day is fully supported and which become part of our daily life and will help us really to have a more clear vision and action of life. Thank you so much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Sao Tome and Principe for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka. You have the floor.
بيانه وأعطي الكلمة الآن إلى ممثل ساو تومو وبرنسيبي.
Excellencies, Honorable Mr. President, by congratulating your delegation for organizing such important debate, allow me to go straight to the point. What to say about war, or what has already been said by eminent and prominent personality along the course of the human history. Therefore, I don't see much left to say about it. And I don't see what I could say more about war or what it has already been said by other much more expert speakers here. In virtue of this, Mr. President, allow me then to simply express my modest opinion by respectfully saying that war, it is something of which we have to do a lot about it, more than lecturing alone, something to be eradicated by finding definitive and urgent solution to seize it once for all. Otherwise, I wonder how could we define the human species as a Homo sapiens? Sapient of what? Of annihilating ourselves because greedy for power and other selfish reasons? Of generating thousands of other misery which war takes with it? Yes, surely we are sapient of all misery we are able to generate because of our unwiseness. But again, I wonder if we are indeed aware of what war is causing to humanity since dawn of the history, as facts speak by themselves and prove the contrary. In fact, facts prove we are not aware at all of what we human beings are causing to ourselves. Otherwise, we should not perpetrate war. Because of that, Mr. President, allow me then to highlight the fact that there is a huge difference between to be conscient, which means physically alert, and to be conscious, which means to be morally responsible of action we may perpetrate. not to say that man, for his conduct, placed himself at the lowest level of the evolutionary scale's life, and that it is not my statistic, but statement of scientists. Based on this ground, Mr. President, and before to be pointed out, perhaps, that I am philosophizing and not to be learned with the dim, allow me one more time to highlight the necessity to find practical solutions beside the two, sometime, cautious talks, part of the diplomacy, which are righteous part of it, yes, but not enough. We should not forget that while meeting for lecturing, discussing, or for any good reasons and best intentions, thousands and thousands of people continue dying in the name of diplomacy. Therefore, Mr. President, I may be able to contribute a little to the discussion by modestly expressing my view on it, and which may stimulate some reflection about our humanity, often forgotten in the name of diplomacy, which seems supporting more materialistic achievements than human spiritual growth and social wealth. Yes, Mr. President, although we all know that peace starts within an individual, regrettably, facts shows that the nature of man is more prone towards employing violent and aggressive actions while confronting with diversities than choosing peaceful solutions. Thus, this is the time to be very honest by asking ourselves, do really men, governments, wish to end wars, poverty, and any kind of misery? If it is so, why are we not able to translate in practice what we keep talking here and there, then? Why we let prevail all sorts of speculations and exploitations which these malaffairs generate, affecting negatively our social system? Why don't we make use of our science and knowledge to save and preserve life instead of spurring wars by fabricating weapons of mass destruction? In short, fact shows that it is all about game of power, speculations, and interests. So, in such scenario, Mr. President, I ask, what to do? I leave the floor, Mr. President, reiterating the fact that unless the world's leader opt for a politic of essentiality by encompassing a more holistic vision of life, more than a politic of interest alone, conflicts and wars will continue germinating on the planet. The true nature of mankind, which is spiritual, will have to prevail upon his materialistic predominant vision, as man life all should not be ruled by financial dictates. In fact, such ongoing reflects an indisputable truth, which shows up defaults ingrained into our human system of governance, which adopts schemes yet ruled by speculating legislation and based on the culture of tolerance, instead to be grounded on a balanced distribution of the world's resources and respectful confrontation more than tolerance. The unbalanced distribution and tolerating mentality on a long run ends up by generating hostilities and conflicts more than promoting peace and socio-economic developments. In truth, hereby, those should be the lessons of war. I conclude my speech now, Mr. President, by stating that as a person speaking in the name of many persons like me, we don't dream to have a good car, a big house, or a rich, mundane life, which is nothing wrong to long for it, once we have established a peaceful and wealthy global societal system. Our dream is about ending wars and coexisting in harmony in this very moment. In consideration of all this, therefore, peace should not remain just a cultural event or a diplomatic debate, but is about exercising our responsibility as sentient beings. Thank you, Mr. President.
أشكر ممثل سان تومي وبرنسيبي وأعطي الكلمة الآن إلى ممثل جمهورية.
I thank the representative of Uruguay for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Nepal.
Mr. President, first of all, I wish to thank you for organizing this important debate at the Security Council during the presidency of Nigeria today. I also thank Secretary General His Excellency Ban Ki-moon and the Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Ms. Zainab Bangura, as well as Ms. Rhoda Misak of NGO Work Network on Women, Peace and Security for their comprehensive briefing this morning. Mr. President, for far too long, the role of gender in conflict had remained the least studied, least understood, and least utilized in the realm of peace.
Statement. I give the floor to the representative of Sao Tome and Principe.
Thank you so much, Madam President, and congratulations for your presidency. There is a lot to say on the subject, but to be brief, at the present of the human history, human race has strengthened its physical, sensorial, and intellectual forces. This is not a negative point unless we allow such forces to express themselves freely at use and consummation of the ego, of the exclusive self-wealthy greediness, which permits the individualism and the logic of the predation predominance. This is an inborn humankind tendency from which originates separation, division, contraposition, conflicts, and so on. Result is inevitably wars. To stop such myopic out-destructive tendency, there is the need of something strong and decisive, capable to insert itself into this physical, sensorial, and intellectual contest in order to revert this vicious auto-destructive tendency. We believe that in such epoch, a new force will have to strengthen, which is the one of the spirituality and conscience. In fact, and not by chance, many have defined this the era of the awakening of the conscience, although it is obvious that this does not happen easily. Reality is that this process is opposed by several lobbies in power who exert their political, financial, economic, and mass communication power to directly or indirectly control governance. Nevertheless, such opposition, but the conscience awakening is yet a reality. Let's go through some major change in respect of the past. Ecologist culture, animalist culture for the protection of species at risk of extinction, increasing of volunteering activity and more human availability towards others, no more restricted just to family members and known persons, to a closely circles or group of people, more awareness due to personal inner growth, implicating more responsibility towards society at large. The last and not the least, Madam President, embracement of a wider holistic culture and vision of life. All these are signs that the awakening of consciences is in place. It is a real wave. What about women then? Why, in spite of such so-called awakening of consciences, still today, women are continuously abused either in their rights as a world citizen and as a person? It is so shocking to see that still today, in such advanced world, we have to talk about women and children's rights as a special concession. Rather to comment about such absurdity and repeat and again same words which have been already repeated since time immemorial, allow me, Madam President, to share some more constructive consideration more than intellectually speculate over the issue. Unfortunately, the human system basis is doing on a factor, contradiction, which nullify whatever in other hands is promoted. Such factor, contradiction, is not seriously taken into consideration, and because of its underestimation, this virus, being free to worm into human apparatus, is negatively affecting our behavioral logic at the point of affecting the social mental scheme too, on which we human beings have structured our coexistence rules. In fact, the society at large has based its values on corrupt values passed by genuine, which after all are not genuine at all. That is why our society stands for poverty, degradation, corruption, deprivation, perversion, abuse of power, conspiracy, genocide, and thousands of other misery. Having based our whole social system on denaturalized and subverted value, it is obvious that the system on which we are basing our way of living, it is by consequence vicious and staggering too. In fact, the new leadership should be formed by scientific, educational, holistic patterns which would sensitize the leader to an observing dynamic, to observe themselves and their doing, a prelude this for an awareness domain installation. In virtue of this, Madam President, allow me to reiterate the fact that it is huge to find solutions based on scientific grounds. Therefore, we have to enforce the teaching of scientific programs into our educative and training system on which human beings have to be trained according to a holistic vision of life by overturning sterile dominant philosophies and schemes. To the young generation, more than teaching them just how to earn money alone, through right governance, they have to be supported in understanding their innate creative attitude so that they can realize themselves by teaching them natural ways of living. Example, how emotion works, to learn how to listen themselves and others. In situation of conflict, how to evoke calm in themselves and their surrounding while practicing methods of good communication. Now, going back to the woman subject, research has shown that women have an advantage in negotiating because of the two more female-related skills number. One is listening, that means being able and interested and aware of the understand and aware of the importance of truly hearing what is the other person's point of view and processing that in context of their own point of view, instead of always thinking that they are the only one who are right and correct. The second quality and skill that women have, it is that women are helpful in negotiations, tending to focus on cooperation more than competition or control. Research shows that an orientation towards cooperation more often leads to tolerance, which eventually is a palliative according to me, and understanding that is crucial for reaching an agreement. Another point is that women having a voice in peace and security is a fulfillment of the proposed focus area of the post-2015 agenda concerning gender equality, a woman's empowerment, and it also overlaps the focus area of sustainable society because when women feel empowered in a peaceful situation, they create a peaceful family settings since women are crucial in raising the children. This peaceful family context sets the stage for a more peaceful and sustainable society and therefore a more peaceful world. In fact, it is well respected that fact that women, who are more than half of the world's population, help keep and protect our peace and security through their strong family ties and works at home and their influence on the workplace and policy in their professional and diplomatic lives. Just like men of honor throughout the world, their influence is critical to making and preserving the global village of peace and the security that every family and community needs and wants. Fortunately, the UN, in its wisdom, has recognized the importance women play to peace and security by establishing UN Women, which, although necessary, from another hand, it is the result of a distorted societal system, as it is the evidence that women are subject to special concession rights. That is why it is so aberrant and offensive to see vicious men who are hateful of all society, no matter what they say in public, attacking women, especially the most defenseless among them, in the name of some cause or as an act of war or to take some sick pleasure during conflict. Violence against women is merely that, violence. It is without merit or cause. It is without justification and demonstrate an abandonment of hope, And it is merely violence against women that is so unacceptable and tragic, but sexual violence in particular. Rape, as well all know, is not just a crime of sex, but of violence. Not a show of power, but of immeasurable weakness. It demonstrates that worst among men and civilization, that somehow men in conflict could condone this kind of degradation not only to the women they harm, but ultimately to themselves and all humanity through sexual violence against women during wartime. In the end, sexual violence against women during conflict is not a sign of one force's power over another, although militias may believe this for reasons that may date back to generation and civilization where women were held by men, and therefore their subjugation by outsider force reflect back on other men with whom there was conflict. Now, our world has evolved to where it is clear and well known that these terrible acts stand alone apart from war, expressing the rapist's own inability, impotency, and wrongful thinking. Sexual violence against women during conflict only reinforces the minds of the civilized world how wrong those guilty warriors are and how bereft of merit their position must be to fall solo themselves and hurt the most vulnerable, the most innocent, and perhaps the least able to defend themselves at those moments against these senseless, barbaric acts. As our consciousness continues to raise and the world evolves, we must take a united stand to say never more to such violence against women, and to hope that those who in conflict understand why they war and how half the world are neither part of their argument, nor part of the spoils of war, but always part of our healing and the return back from conflict and toward peace and security once again. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Sao Tome and Principe for...
Thank you, Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights, Mr. Simonovic, Your Excellency Ambassador Sebastiano Cardi, Permanent Representative of Italy, Dr. Tawakkol Abdel Salam Karman. It's a great pleasure to see you again. Thank you for your leadership and commitment for human rights. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and Permanent Mission of Italy to the United Nations for organizing this event. 25 years ago, only about 1/4 of United Nations member states had abolished the death penalty. Today, more than 4 out of 5 countries, an estimated 160 member states, have either abolished the death penalty or do not practice it. The General Assembly will soon take civil and political rights aiming at the abolition of the death penalty. Second, support the resolution on the moratorium on the use of the death penalty. Third, take concrete steps towards abolishing or no longer practicing this form of punishment. The death penalty has no place in the 21st century. Together, we can finally end this cruel and inhuman practice everywhere around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor to Sao Tome and Principe.
Mr. Chairman, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the floor, and to His Excellency Ambassador Sebastiano Cardi, PR of the Mission of Italy, for having organized such important conference on such sensitive issue. Since dawn of history, it has been a so controversial issue, generating so many side effects, and nonetheless, exploitation and speculation of many kind. An issue which has been discussed by thousands and thousands of eminent personalities from different walks of life and all around the world. Therefore, I'm sure that I can't say more than of what has been already said by such a world platform and here present today. Allow me then a very brief consideration which I would like to share with you as a question. Meetings, roundtables, events, conferences, protests, demonstrations, and so on are good activity to spread awareness about the issue, but unfortunately have proved not to be an enough instrument to eradicate the death penalty.
So, without wanting to be polemic or sarcastic, my question is very simple. Is really there the political willpower to abolish the death penalty? And if yes, why governments are not able to do it? To convert talks in immediate actions. We continue talking about human life, value, but we do really value it? If yes, why we continue perpetrating such wrongdoings then? Before such scenario, it's difficult to think optimistically, as fact speaks by themselves and prove to be the contrary, revealing a governmental human system based on corrupt and distorted values. There would be a lot to say about it, but I leave the floor reiterating the fact that unless governments all will embrace an holistic vision of life more than just a politic of interest alone, death penalty, like wars and any kind of aberration, will continue germinating on the planet. Said that, it seems that the human system bases its doing on a politic of contradiction, which from one end constructs, whilst from another destroys, keeping papering cracks from the middle of a wall instead to address the problem at the root. Based on this consideration, let's hope that all together we can a day really abolish the death penalty. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished Deputy Permanent Representative of Sao Tome and Principe.